Hello, Da Vinci. Welcome back. This is Thursday, 28th of January, 2021 history lesson. We're on our 15th lesson of history, and we're now looking at someone who is William Herschel. Well, it is this bloke right here, this man right here. So let's have a look at who he is. Well, in his early days, so he was born on November the 15th, 1738 in Hanover, in Germany. His father, Isaac, was it's covered here. He was an oboist, and he gave him an oboe and violin lessons because he wanted him to be a magician. He also learned French. His French tutor encouraged him to study science. So Herschel's music career. So in 1756, he moved to London and got his first job as a music copyist. Okay. So a music copyist, you can see the person doing it in this picture here with what looks like a feather in his hand. And what it is it's a type of, when you're writing, they used to use like ink and a feather. And you used to write using like the bird's feathers, and because it's quite pointy, you used to dip it in ink and then you used to write. So a music copyist is someone who would copy out the music sheet. So you can just about see here, but definitely the picture down here where everyone is playing using the sheet of music on a stand, and they know what to play because they're reading it. Well, because there was no photocopies in those days, Herschel used to write down and copy out one piece of music so that everyone in the orchestra was able to play the same music. By 1780, he was the director of the Bath Orchestra. So you can see this person here in this blue coat, that they're the person that stands at the front, and they do this like little waving thing with their the conductor's stick. Well, and what they would do is they would stand there and they would tell everyone how to keep in time with the music. So at that point, he was a music composer. And he composed, so a music composer is someone that writes music, and a music director is someone who directs music, okay? So he was writing his music, and he composed over 20 symphonies and numerous anthems. So that's the type of music that was in that era, okay? So this is William Herschel's house in Bath. So Torchy Teddy, what do you notice about these pictures? Can you describe what's inside of the house and what the inside of the house looks like? And why are the pictures in black and white? They're your three questions I want you to talk to your Teddy. Well, some of the things that you might have noticed about the pictures is you might have noticed that they are in black and white. And this was because they didn't have colour pictures back then. All the pictures that were taken were usually paintings rather than pictures, and they were painted in colour. But pictures like this, you can see what they used to do is they used to have a really old-fashioned way where they'd have a light bulb and it'd break and flash, and because it used to flash and take pictures. And you can see here that everything is in black and white because they didn't have the colour cameras then. So you can also see on the table here, there are lots of different types of maybe cooking equipment, and it looks very bizarre because it's not quite pots and pans that maybe we'd see today. And this bottom picture here we can see is Herschel's kitchen. So this is the place that he used to live in when he was in Bath. Now, at the minute, we haven't found out why William Herschel's important. We've just found out he used to be a conductor of music, or he used to write out the music sheets. He then used to direct the music of an orchestra, and then he used to write the symphonies. He used to be a composer of music. We haven't found out why he's important to us. Well, he had an interest in astronomy. Now, we know astronomy is the study of space. So as Herschel was learning more about science, he became very interested in the sky. He wanted to be able to see everything that he couldn't see with his eyes. So he decided to make his own telescope and investigate the sky. And you can see here, there is what looks to be a drawing. Now, it's not a picture, it's a drawing. And you can see you've got William Herschel here. You have his sister, Caroline Herschel. And you've got a small telescope that he's got in his hand. He's got a pocket telescope, so one that would fold up, you could have in his pocket. You can also see here next to it, and in this drawing, is a big telescope, one that you would have to use with two hands, and you'd have to set up in the right place, and then you'd look through and you could see the stars. The first evidence of Herschel's interest in the sky was found in his personal diary, which dated back to 1766, which is 255 years ago. Okay. On the 13th of March, 1781, only 6 planets had been discovered when William Herschel became interested in astronomy. So we know there's 8 planets in our solar system, and only 6 of them had been discovered at this point. Nobody had discovered any planets that could not be seen with the naked eye. Now that means nobody had noticed any more planets because they were only looking with their eyes, not using big telescopes. So on March 13th, 1781, William Herschel was searching the sky with his telescope in his garden, and he discovered something which at first he thought was a comet. And you can see a picture here in the night sky, a comet. We know a comet is an asteroid. Now it's a piece of rock that's flying through space, and as it enters into Earth's atmosphere, it gets very, very hot and burns up, and it looks like a shooting star. And then by the time that it gets anywhere close to Earth, it's burnt up and disappears. Or sometimes if they're big enough, they crash into Earth. But it burns up and disappears into nothing because it's coming in at such speed. But this is what a comet would look like. So he was looking at that and he thought, there's a shooting star, a comet in the sky. But later he realized that what he had discovered wasn't a comet. He had discovered a planet, and it was the planet Uranus. He discovered the 7th planet, and this was the first new planet to be discovered since the ancient times. Okay. Now he's a little cartoon picture, and it's him looking in the telescope saying, I say, why is that comet moving so slowly? And it's Uranus saying, because I'm a planet, I'm not a comet. And now we know that this is only a little bit of fun, but this is what Uranus looks like. Now, it's quite interesting, this picture, because these pictures show it a little bit, but not that much. Now you can see Uranus, its rings going that way. That's because Uranus is the only planet that's lying on its side. It actually spins this way rather than spinning horizontally. It spins around because basically the planet is on its side. It's turned on its side. So it's like being on its belly almost. And that's what the planet looks like there. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a drawing, but that's to show you. Now, it wasn't called Uranus originally. It was called the Georgium Sidus. Okay. Now, you named the Georgium Sidus in honor of King George III, but the name was later changed to Uranus. He became famous overnight. King George III then hired him as a private astronomer, so he moved to Datchet. Then he moved to Windsor, and after a short time, he finally settled down in Slough, and this is his house in Slough. So the great William Herschel that discovered the 7th planet of Uranus ended up moving and living in Slough. How exciting! So here are some facts about your astronomer, right? Your local astronomer, someone who obviously we know he lived in Slough, so it's local to us. So he built his 6-meter telescope in his garden. Now, if you imagine your ruler is 30 centimeters, a meter is around about 3 of these. So if you have 3 of these, you're probably looking at something around about this long, maybe a bit longer. There you go. Now he built a telescope 6 times that size. So it's almost like my arm stretched out and 6 lots of them. He received a gold medal from the King of Poland and became the first president of the Royal Astronomical Society. While living in Slough, he discovered 4 moons, 2 orbiting Uranus and 2 orbiting Saturn. William Herschel has accomplished many things in his life. One of them was his 40-foot telescope that he built in Slough. He died on August 25th, 1822 in Slough, and he was 83 years old. So here's this picture here. This is a 40-foot telescope. So 12 meters long. So if I'm 6 foot tall, and that's 40 foot tall. That's like 6.5 of me stood on top of each other. 6.5 of me. So if I'm stood up nice and tall, you've got to imagine 5 more Mr. Watkisses standing on my head. That's how tall this telescope was. He constructed it between 1785 and 1789 at the Observatory House in Slough. Now, you might be thinking, oh, the observatory, that sounds familiar. Well, the reason it sounds familiar is because he may have named some places after him. It was the largest telescope in the world for 50 years. Now, can you spot the landmarks? Here are some buildings in Slough to show the respect to the incredible discovery that William Herschel made and contributed to the world of astronomy. So the Slough bus station. Now, it's got a strange curve in the Slough bus station, and it's because he discovered something amazing about traveling light and how light travels. So he made something that shows it's to do with the frequency of light, and that is something that he discovered that's slightly different than his astronomy. There's also a monument on Herschel Street in Slough, close to where the 40-foot telescope was. So in Slough, where that 40-foot telescope was 200 years ago, they've put a monument around about where it used to be. And this is the monument. And then you've also got the Slough Observatory Shopping Centre, and it was named after his observatory. That's where it gets its name from. Herschel discovered Uranus in 1781 in the 18th century, which is 240 more years ago, okay? This was before NASA was founded and even before Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong landed on the moon in 1969, which is 52 years ago, okay? So you've got to imagine, if that was 52 years ago when he landed on the moon, think about how long ago it was when William Herschel discovered Uranus. 240 years ago. And you can see here we've got some pictures of what NASA now looks like. So this is some questions. Now, you don't need to do anything with these questions, just something that I want you to have a think about. So can you think of what has changed since William Herschel's discovery of Uranus? So think about these pictures here. Think about how astronomy and how we look at the world has changed since he made that huge telescope and he said, no, there's more out there, and he found Uranus. Think about what sort of technology that we have now that we didn't have back then. What do you think inspired William's curiosity of space and what's beyond the sky? So how do you think William Herschel decided that, wow, there must be something more to space? And think about how you think he was so interested and he was curious about space. And question 4 says, what do you think lies beyond the 8th planet? What do you think is beyond Neptune? What's that 8th planet of Neptune? What do you think is past there? What goes into space? Space is supposed to be something that keeps going forever and ever and ever. So what's out there? Now it's your turn. I want you to discover your own planet. I want you to give it a name, I want you to draw it, and I want you to colour it in. Here's my planet here. Now, my planet is a colourful rainbow-looking planet. It's got lots of different gases in the air that give it a lovely colourful when you're looking at it in a telescope. It's well beyond Neptune. It's as big as Earth. What name could I call it? I'm thinking I'll call it Planet W-A-T-K-IS. Watkiss. I'll call it Planet Watkiss. That's my planet name. I like the sound of that. Planet Watkiss. So I want you to discover your own planet, give it a name, draw it and colour it in, and think about how excited you'd be if this planet was real and it was out there, just like how William Herschel would felt when he discovered Uranus. Thanks very much for coming along to this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, Da Vinci.